Okay, hi, it's Alex Milam from Survival Courses Tasmania. Just doing a quick video about Bushcraft here. We're going to build a very simple lean-to shelter out of everything that's just around us, out of nothing but. Going to use some paracord, that's about the only thing. But otherwise you can actually make cordage quite easily with Bushcraft, and I teach a couple of ways to do that on my series of courses. One thing just quickly, building this shelter, which I'll take you through in a second, I normally have to use a knife and a baton to cut down my poles, or I'm using a mini saw if I'm really lucky and I've got one. That really cuts the work down. But there is another way, so I'm just going to show you. If you get this won't work with green wood, but a lot of the wood here, as long as it's not too rotten, but it is dead wood, but not too rotten, you can actually use what's called a crotch of a tree. So you can see that from we're panning in onto the crotch of that tree. And basically we're just gonna, I'll show you with this bit of dead wood, we're just gonna pass this through the crotch to the desired length we need for our pole. And then we're simply just going to use physics and a little bit of force and just break this where we want it. So we actually did that, you know, fairly easily. We got one thicker one there, and the actual bit I was trying to break off here. So a nice, decent size, kind of 6.5 foot, 7 foot, depending on the size of the shelter you're building. But that took me a lot less energy. I expended a lot less energy than having to cut down. You know, you need about somewhere between 8 and 12 poles per shelter, depending on the situation. So that's just a hint of a really good way to save some energy. Obviously in survival, really, apart from psychology, which I also teach, survival is a lot about energy expenditure versus reward. So that was a good way, just to, quite easy, to create 2 poles out of that. Okay, let me show you the shelter, and we'll come this way. Okay, so again, over the series of courses that I teach, we actually you'll learn over 5 different either natural or hybrid shelters. Some of them quite simple, some of them a bit more long-term for longer term survival in the bush. But a lot of them sort of use a structure like this. I've created a teepee, a tripod down at one end, also used for a teepee. But yeah, instead of a completely freestanding structure, this is a basic lean-to, as you can see. What we've done is, quite often in nature there will be some kind of plant or tree or boulder, or in this case it's a cut down tree, but as you can see it's been cut down a few decades ago. So these happen all over logging areas and in very remote areas like where we are now in Tasmania. But yeah, I've just used that for one end of my ridge pole, the horizontal pole. And then I've created this tripod at this end, just to support the other end of the ridge pole. Next we have our uprights. These don't need to be as strong, so these are a little bit thinner, but again, these can be green wood or dead wood, as long as it's not rotten. That's the main thing. And then what we're using today is we're lucky enough to have some giant ferns just around us. So I've basically just used these, and I'm just going to finish this off behind the shelter. So I'm going to take these, and what I've done is put a couple of horizontal sticks basically across my uprights, and then we can just weave in very simply the rest of these fronds from our giant ferns. So under, over and under, and you'll get a nice roofing material out of that. Okay, so I'll just finish this off temporarily. Get some nice, these are really good length. You can use smaller ferns if that's what you've got. We're just basically weaving these, as I said, to create and plug the gaps. Okay, I've got 2 more here that we've cut. Okay, so if we come around to the front. Okay, so that's, you can see what I've done. I'd already started, as you can see. You're just basically weaving these giant fern fronds and creating a pretty stable, pretty waterproof roof here. Then we've got, if you just pan down, we've got a little pile of some of the slightly smaller ones. Same plants, just slightly smaller fronds. And what I'm going to do now is lay the rest of these down as a mattress, because we all know that insulation on the ground is really important. So the trick is with this is to always lay them in the same direction, just as I'm going to do now. The reason for that is nothing more than if you lay them in different directions, they poke into you in the night, up into your back, into your shoulder, whatever. So just lay them, doesn't matter which direction, just lay them all in the same direction. You'll find it's a lot easier. But we're just going to lay a few of these down on top of the ground. There's a bit of an art form needed here, but it's nothing nothing too complicated, nothing too fancy. And any ends of the fronds that you do get, these are quite sharp, you just want to tuck them in, poke them down, so that they're not sticking up either. Okay, and that very simply is my rudimentary shelter, a lean-to in this case. That's pretty much done. You would need to, if you're expecting rain or if there's any chance of any rain, in order to make this waterproof just using the fronds, you would need to use probably twice as many as I've used today. It takes an incredible amount of natural plant foliage to make a structure or a shelter waterproof. But yeah, it's the same job, you just need twice as many fronds. And then, yeah, we're good to go. So that's actually pretty comfortable in here, believe it or not. It's actually quite comfortable. They provide quite a lot of spring. And yeah, that's about it.